Hey, what's up, guys? Alright, let's get back into our Edward, chapter 5. And it looks like a trunk and some clothes and boots and hats and just, like someone's putting stuff away, traveling. Ooh, let's see. Alright. The house on Egypt Street became frantic with activity. Okay, so the last thing we left off was the family was going to go on a ship. Even Edward, but Pellegrina wasn't. And so they're going on a ship. The house on Egypt Street became frantic with activity as the Tulane family prepared for their voyage to England. Wow, they're going to England? Edward possessed a small trunk, and Abelina packed it for him, filling it with his finest suits and several of his best hats and 3 pairs of shoes, all so that he might cut a fine figure in London. All that for a little doll? This is the fanciest little doll I've ever heard of. Before she placed each outfit in the trunk, she displayed it to him. "Do you think this shirt with this suit?" she asked him. Or, "Would you like to wear your black derby?" Derby's a hat. Or, "Do you want to look handsome in it? Shall we pack it?" And then, finally, on a bright Saturday morning in May, Edward and Abelina and Mr. and Mrs. Tulane were all aboard the ship, standing at the railing. Pellegrina was at the dock. On her head she wore a floppy hat strung around with flowers. She stared straight at Edward. Her dark eyes glowed. "Goodbye," Abelina shouted to her grandmother. "I love you." The ship pulled away from the dock. Pellegrina waved to Abeline. "Goodbye, lady," she called. "Goodbye." Edward felt something damp in his ears. Abeline's tears, he supposed. He wished that she would not hold him so tight. To be so clutched so fiercely often resulted in a wrinkled clothing. This rabbit is getting hugged by this little girl who loves him so much, and she's literally crying on him because she misses her grandma. And what's he like? He's like, "Ugh, dude, you're gonna wrinkle my clothes." Edward, Edward, Edward. 3 words. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Finally, all the people on land, including Pellegrina, disappeared. Edward, for one, was relieved to see the last of her. As was to be expected, Edward exacted much attention on board the ship. What a singular rabbit," said an elderly lady with 3 strings of pearls wrapped around her neck. She bent down to look more closely at Edward. "Thank you," said Abelina. Several little girls on board gave Edward deep glances full of longing. Longing means like they're jealous of it. Like, "Oh, I want a rabbit china doll." They asked Abeline if they might hold him. "No," said Abelina. "I'm afraid he's not the kind of rabbit who likes to be held by strangers." 2 young boys, brothers named Martin and Amos, took a particular interest in Edward. Uh-oh, here comes the little boys. "What does he do?" Martin asked Abeline on the second day at sea. He pointed at Edward, who was sitting on a deck chair with his long legs stretched in front of him. So he's just like laid out on the ship having a good time. "He doesn't do anything," says Abelina. "Does he wind up or something?" said Amos. "No," said Abeline. "He doesn't wind up." "Well, then what's the point of him then?" said Martin. "The point is that he's Edward," said Abelina. "That's not much of a point," said Amos. It's not," agreed Martin. And then, after a long, thoughtful pause, he said, "I wouldn't let anybody dress me like that." "Yeah, me neither, Amos." "Do his clothes come off?" said Martin. "Of course they do," said Abeline. "He has many different outfits, and he has his own pajamas, too. They're made of silk." Edward, as usual, was disregarding the conversation. A breeze was blowing in off the sea, and the silk of the scarf wrapped around his neck billowed out behind him. On his head, he wore a straw boater. I guess that's a boat hat. The rabbit was thinking that he must look quite dashing. Okay, I know what dashing means. So he looks cool, he looks fancy. It came as a total surprise to him when he was grabbed off the deck chair, and first his scarf and then his jacket and pants were ripped from his body. He heard his pocket watch hit the deck off the ship, and then held upside down, and he watched the watch roll merely towards Abeline's feet. Oh, so he's getting held up and his watch falls off. Okay. Look at him, said Martin. He's even got underwear. He held Edward aloft so that Amos could see. Yeah, take it off, shouted Amos. No, screamed Abelina. Martin removed Edward's underwear. Edward was paying attention now. Oh yeah, I bet now you're waking up and focused. He was mortified. Mortified means like you just feel like you could die. Okay, and you got to think, Edward's this fancy little rabbit that thinks he's like the coolest thing since sliced bread. And now he's being like, his clothes are getting ripped off and he's being waved around on a ship by some little boy. He was completely naked except for the hat on his head, and the other passengers on board the ship were looking at him, directing curious and embarrassing glances his way. Give him to me, screamed Abilene. He's mine. No, said Amos to Martin. Give him to me. He clapped his hands together and then held them out open. Toss him to me. So you guys ever play monkey in the middle where there's some kid in the middle and you're like tossing something back and forth? And the little kid's like, give it back. And you're like, here, take it. Whoosh. And which, yeah, I've never done that. But that's what some people do. Toss him to me, he said. Please, cried Evelina. Don't throw him. He's made of china. He'll break. Martin threw Edward, and Edward sailed naked through the air. Only a moment ago, the rabbit had thought that being naked in front of a shipload of strangers was the worst thing that could happen to him. But he was wrong. It was much worse being tossed, in the same naked state, from the hands of one grubby, laughing boy to another. So these two little kids are just tossing them back and forth. Abeline's going crazy in the middle, just tossing them back and forth. Amos caught Edward and held him up, displaying him triumphantly. Throw him back, called Martin. Amos raised his arm, but just as he was about to throw Edward, Abilene tackled him, shoving her head into his stomach and upsetting the boy's arm. Oh, so this dude's about to tackle, and Abeline's like, I ain't having this. Boom! Just straight rhinos into him. And his grip loosens when he throws Edward. So it was that Edward did not go flying back into the dirty arms of Martin. Instead, Edward Tulane went overboard. Oh, shipwreck. Okay, cool. All right, now it's going to get real crazy, y'all, because Edward just got thrown off into the ocean in the middle, in the, like, where they're going to it must be the Atlantic if they're going to London. So, holy cow. All right, cool. Well, good chatting. Guys, comment in the discussion in Google Classroom. Let's have some discussion, y'all. Come on, man. I'm bored on the computer. I want to talk to y'all and see what's going on. What do you think of this book? Okay, that's it. Have a good one, guys.